Hey guys, welcome to today's class. Have fun.
Good morning. Welcome to today's class. My name is Good Luck, and I'll be discussing government with you. And the topic of interest today will be development of major political parties in Nigeria. The country we know today as Nigeria came into existence in 1914 with the amalgamation of the Southern and Northern Protectorates by Lord Lugard. And ever since then, up until 1922, Nigerians were not allowed to elect or choose a representative or have a representative in the colonial government. But in 1922, with the introduction of the elective principle by the Clifford Constitution, paved the way for the right of Nigerians to elect, to send a representative into the colonial government. One interesting thing you should know about government is I'll be spicing it up with a bit of history. So we'll be having to do with dates, figures, and personalities, to be able to balance our discussion and also help you to understand the development of political parties, major political parties in Nigeria. So as we carry on, you'll be able to acquaint yourself with evergreen knowledge about the history of Nigeria and also the development of major political parties. We also had other political parties in Nigeria, but we will be focusing majorly on those parties that played a vital role in the political history of Nigeria. Also, it's a long history, but we will be covering for this first section of the class. We'll be covering the years 1923 when the first political party was formed in Nigeria, up until 1966 when this aspect of history of Nigerian um, political life or political system was truncated by the military in the 1966 military coup, and most of these parties was dissolved by the military. So starting points would be in 1922 with the elective principle. What is this elective principle? This elective principle is one of the introductions made by Hoof Clifford, to give rights, elective rights, suffrage, as you know in government, to the people, to the indigenous people and the educated elites. But before this elective principle, the colonial governments mainly focused on indirect rule system, whereby using the warrant chiefs, in the north, east, and west to govern the people. So, and these warrant chiefs, according to the educated elites, were illiterate. and did not represent the interest of the people, rather their own selfish interests, and were students to the colonial governments or colonial masters. So with the arrival of educated elites like Herbert Macaulay, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, Abayomi, Akintola, Davis, these are huge names in the political foundation and development of political parties in Nigeria. As we go on with this class, you will see the role and their impact in the political history of Nigeria. So, having understood a bit of indirect rule system, the warrant chiefs, their role in the political history of Nigeria, and then the elective principle, you can see that the elective principle gave impetus to the formation of political parties in Nigeria. Also, the first political party that was formed in Nigeria was the Nigerian National Democratic Party (NNDP) in 1923. And by 1923, 1928, and 1933, the party dominated the seats in the Lagos Legislative Council. And also, because basically they were the only party in the country at the time, they were forced to reckon in the political history of Nigeria. The party was formed by Herbert Macaulay after he returned from Europe. And then to rival the NNDP, we had the formation of National Youth Movement, NYM, in 1934. It was formed by Professor Iya Eta. My pronunciation. It was formed by Professor Iya Eta in 1934. The party was, we can say, more nationalistic. It was more, it was an multi-ethnic party more than the NNDP. The party had prominent names like Azikiwe, Obafemi, Davis, Abayomi, and Akintola, like I mentioned before. These are the names, the major force that pushed for the extension of elective principle and the formation of other parties. The party also ended the dominance of Herbert Macaulay's NNDP, and by 1944, the NNDP had its issue and lost its dominance or stopped existing as a party in Nigeria at the time. And also the NYM, the National Youth Movements, formed by ETA, was vibrant, was multi-ethnic because it had the Yorubas and the Igbos majorly and few of the Hausas. So it was a strong party, but it did not last till the independence of Nigeria because by 1951, power tussle became a huge problem in the party because like the names I just mentioned before, when you have these names in one party, then definitely there's going to be a problem because everybody wants to represent, everybody wants to lead, and by this the party lost its focus, it lost its relevance, and lost its members as well. And by the time it lost its members, it ceased to be a party in 1951. But by 1944, Nnamdi Azikiwe had already left the party and formed the NCNC with Herbert Macaulay as its president and then Nnamdi Azikiwe as its secretary. The NCNC also became a huge or major party in the country, pushing for the independence of the country, and taking over of power from the colonial masters. One good thing we can remember the NYM for, that's the National Youth Movement, was its posture to push for the relevance and recognition of educated elites and the abolition of the indirect rule system. Because, like I told you, the indirect rule system made use of the warrant chiefs rather than the educated elites. So the NYM pushed so that the educated elites can and should be recognized by the colonial master and also pave way for them to get involved in the politics of Nigeria and prepare them and the country for independence. So it played a major role in the independence of Nigeria, in as much as it did not last till 1960 when Nigeria got her independence. So with the formation of NCNC by Herbert Macaulay, it became a power. It's won elections majorly in the eastern region of Nigeria, and also pushed the AG, which was a party formed in 1950 by um, Obafemi Awolowo, which became a Western regional party. The NCNC, which we are focusing on now, as formed by Herbert Macaulay. After his death, Nnamdi Azikiwe took over and pushed, the party to become more of a national party in Nigeria. Before we go further, I also want to add that the dismiss or the dismiss or the breakdown of the NYM led to the ethnic political rivalry that we have today in Nigeria, because as soon as these educated elites decided to form their own various parties, they formed their parties based on ethnic line, whereby we had the AG dominant in the West, Action Group dominant in the West, the Northern People's Congress dominant in the North, and the NCNC dominant in the East. This created what I say a vacuum in the political history of Nigeria, and this is the same problem we are having today. But going further, since we're looking at the development of major political parties in Nigeria, it's also pertinent to touch these key points so that we also remember it, as time goes on, because it's going to play a major role when we will be discussing military coup or military rule in Nigeria. Okay, going further, we've talked about the NCNC and how it is a major party, a national party, as well as a major party in the East, sorry, and the AG, Action Group, a major party in the West, and then a national party as well, also the NPC. So you see, all these three major parties played a vital role in the independence of Nigeria, and also produced great leaders, nationalists we had in the country that propelled Nigeria on the road to independence. So let's look at the Action Congress. The Action Congress, we can talk about the Oduduwa, the Lagos movement. These are the ingredients or the preliminaries that led to the formation of AG. And then the involvement or the prominence and the importance of Chief Obafemi Awolowo played a major role in the formation of the Action Group. And this group, since the Nigerian independence in 1960, played a vital role as an opposition party. I also like to remind you that the NPC and the NCNC formed a coalition to become the party in power, whereby the NCNC produced the first president of Nigeria in the person of Nnamdi Azikiwe, and then the NPC produced the prime minister in the person of Alhaji Tafawa Balewa. So the AG became an isolated or opposition party, in the parliament. But also it also created this ethnic rivalry that I told you about, also created a major problem for the West, for the Western region, when Akintola became a huge member of the party. What really went on? We had power tussle, the same power tussle that tore apart the NYM, is the same power tussle that they experienced in the Western region at the time of independence. Because if you remember, like I told you, regionalism played a major role in the political instability of Nigeria, because Mafferson and Leighton divided the country. Okay, Mafferson, let's concentrate on Mafferson, divided the country into three major regions: the West, the North, and the East. And then we went further to have the Middle Belt and all that during after independence. But this division of the country into regional groups has its own problem, power tussle, because in the sense that whereby the northern elements or the regional elements sent their representatives. Now, Obafemi Awolowo was the leader of the Western region, but did not represent in the federal posts or in the federal system. So he was a regional leader, while Akintola was a federal leader of the party. Now, when Awolowo tried to vie for the post of presidency and lost, he came back to become power tussle and party alliance was the major problem between Akintola and Awolowo. Akintola wanted AG, the Action Congress, to align with the party in power, the NPC, to form the leading party. But Awolowo, never wanted to align with any party because he wanted his party to be a dominant party or a party of force to reckon with in the political system of Nigeria. And also, leadership tussle between the two of them became a major issue that led to serious crisis and division of the party in the Western region. And this led to Tafawa Balewa sending Majoke Domi to be the administrator of the region up until when the military took over. So, going further, I think it will be pertinent enough to discuss the individual achievements of the various political parties in Nigeria right from 1923. And we need to be very specific about it to really understand the role or the impacts they made in the country during this period in time. Like I earlier said, the NNDP of Herbert Macaulay won all seats after its formation in 1923, won all seats in the 1923 election, won all seats in the 1928 election, and also won all seats in the 1933 election to the Lagos Legislative Council. So because it had no opposition, it was the only party in the country at the time. With the formation of other parties coming into the political scene, from 1950s onwards, we had division of the seats and of political power in the country into regional levels. So every region had its own party, which was a major force in the specific region, like which I've also told you. In the east we had the NCNC, in the north we had the NPC, and then in the west we had the AG, Action Congress. We also had the IPP, Ibadan People's Party, in the west, which also played a vital role in the contest between the NCNC and the AG. The party members of the IPP had to carpet cross to the to the AG to give them superior numbers over the NCNC. So, by virtue of formation, the NNDP, we are the only parties that contested the 1923, 1928, and 1933 elections. But by 1954, 1956, 1951, 1959, various elections held in Nigeria, we had other parties coming in. We had the NPC, we had the AG, we had the NCNC, we had the IPP, we had various political parties that came into the scene to contest and win various seats. But most importantly, we are going to focus right now on the 1959 federal election, because this is the election that led to the formation of independent government in Nigeria in 1960. So, and this is where we'll talk about having majority party in the country. By 1959, or after the election of the 1959 election, we can say we had three major parties in the country. We had the NCNC, we had the AG, and then we had the NPC. These are the three major political parties we had in the country. But as for the election of 1959, we had various parties that contested in the election. The NCNC, the National Council of Nigeria and Cameroon, had 81 seats. They won 81 seats in the election. Action Congress, Action Group won 73 seats. The Northern People's Congress won 134 seats. The Northern Elements Progressive Union won 8 seats. The Mobalaji Grand Alliance won 6 seats. The Igala Union 4. Then the Igbira Tribal Union 1 seat. Niger Delta Congress 1 seat. So all these political parties cannot make influence in the political structure of the country. So that is why they had coalition governments. So parties began to come together to be able to have superiority over the other. And by the end of this coalition, the Northern People's Congress had 148 seats. The National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroon had 89, and the Action Group had 75. So very few joined the Action Group. But at the end of the day, the NPC did not have the majority of votes or the majority of seats to become the single leading party in the country. So it had to form an alliance, a coalition with NCNC to form the government, while the AG became the opposition party. And this is what kind of led to disagreement between Akintola and Awolowo, which I mentioned before. Akintola really wanted to be in government with his party to form alliance with the NPC to form the government in the federal level. But because Awolowo refused, and power tussle as well, they had their disagreements, which, one of the things, one of those events that led to the Nigerian Civil War. So when we're talking about the Nigerian Civil War in our next two classes, because next class we'll be talking about development of political parties in Nigeria right from 1979, that's the Second Republic, down to 2019, which was when the last election was held. So we're looking at the major parties during this period. So after that class, we're going to be having discussion about military rule in Nigeria and the Nigerian Civil War. So from this discussions, you'll be able to understand in-depthly the problem between Akintola and Awolowo. But right now, we are focusing on the party structure, not individual differences or their power tussle, though it's had a significant shift of power in the region. So by looking at the number of parties that were formed during the First Republic of Nigeria, you will see that not all, even in current Nigerian dispensation, not all parties were able to win seats. We had over 22 political parties during the First Republic, but about 8 could get seats in the federal level, and not even a single party could have a single majority during the elections. So we had coalition government, just like I've mentioned before. But the division of the party politics of Nigeria during the First Republic created ethnic rivalry, strong ethnic rivalry, and this continued even until the present time. And having said all this, we will now be going forward to talk about the arm of government as a topic. So we are shifting right now from development of major political parties to arms of government. So we'll be discussing arms of government now. The organ of governments. Nigeria is a country, we're a federal republic of Nigeria, and we have three arms of government: the federal, the states, and the local government. So our organ of government, it's a branch of government that deals with how government controls the states, makes the state function, and how powers are shared and controlled in the states between the federal, the states, and the local governments. So we are going to be looking at the federal, the states, and the local governments functions or in Nigeria, and also we're going to be looking at the arms of governments. So in the arms of government, we have the federal, the executive, which is the federal. Then we also have the legislative and the judiciary. So all these three arms of government has its specific function, but most importantly, they all act as checks and balance on the others. So they check the excessive powers, like the legislatures check the excessive power of the president and his cabinet, the executive, whereas the judiciary also checks the excessive power of the legislatures and the executive. And the executive appoints the Supreme Court's Chief Justice of Nigeria. Now, the executive arm of government is headed by the president, as in the case of Nigeria, and his appointed ministers. What are the functions of the executive arm of government? One, as the president, who is the head of the executive arm, he appoints his ministers and then he approves or vetoes a law. That is the case that when a bill is passed, it must have gone through all its stages, and then the final stage is the presidential approval or veto. So it is the function of the president to either veto a bill or approve a bill. Veto a bill in the sense that he doesn't approve of it. Like you can send a bill to the president and he doesn't agree with the bill, he will withhold the bill for 30 days, as the case may be, and then the Senate can recall, that the legislative arm of government can recall the bill and then decide within them to either go ahead to override the president's veto and all that. So he is the leader of the country, that is the president, the executive arm of government. He makes appointment, he represents the country, or he sends delegates to represent the country. So he is what you can term the most powerful person, but his power is limited because we have the legislative arm and then we have the judiciary as well, that like I said, limits the overzealous, overpower hungry presidents or leaders of a country. So these are their functions. So the executive arm is what we see that represents the leading body of the country, that approves the laws, that appoints its ministers, that executes most of the projects or most of the rules or laws of the country. So just like their name sounds, they are the executive, they execute the law. Why the legislators, they are the lawmakers. Like we have two arms. Okay, we have two types of legislatures. We have the unitary or the bicameral. So we have the bicameral or unicameral. So when we say unicameral is when we have one chamber of the legislative arm, but if it's bicameral, we talk about two chambers, the upper chamber and the lower chamber. Like in UK, we have the upper chamber, the House of Commons, and the House of Chiefs. So, but in Nigeria, we have the Senate and then the House of Reps. So, and the Senate is made up of 109 senators, while the House of Representatives is made of 360 representatives, to represent the 35 states and the Federal Capital Territory. So this is the legislative arm of government. They are the lawmakers. They make the law, whereby they propose a bill, scrutinize the bill, and pass the bill to the executive, to the president to assent, veto the bill. So this is the function of the legislative arm of government, to make laws. The laws we have in the country is from the legislative arm of government. They are the lawmakers. They are known as the lawmakers. And the Senate is headed by the Senate President, the Deputy Senate President, and in the House of Rep we have the Speaker of the House. So these are the figureheads we have in this arm of government that represents the people. They are all elected. Those who are not elected are the appointed ministers by the president. And when the president appoints, he sends his ministers to the ministerial list, to the house, that is House of Assembly, for approval. The ministers go through scrutinizing. They have to be scrutinized. They have to be interviewed, just like when you make an appointment. So you have to scrutinize them to know if they are qualified enough to hold their sensitive positions as appointed by the president. So they have a major role, a vital role to play in upholding the constitution of the country, in maintaining laws that will guide both the president, the executive arm, and the citizens. So they are the lawmakers. So most of the laws will have the constitution and everything starts from the legislative arm of government, because this is where the bills that comes up to become law are debated upon. Then we have the judiciary. The judiciary is another arm of government that deals with interpretation of laws, treatment of cases. So where you have the judiciary, we're talking about the lawyers, the chief justice, who is the head of the judiciary. They interpret the law. So once bills are passed and there is disagreement or there is confusion about the law, then the judiciary is called upon to interpret the law. And again, once after elections and parties are having issues, they go to courts, and then at the end of the day, it lands probably in the judiciary, in the Supreme Court, which is the arbitral power, the last court of the country, the most powerful court of the country. So what the Supreme Court decides, no other courts will deliberate on it again, except it is delegated by the Supreme Court. But at the end of it is the Supreme Court that has the final judgments. That is why you say you pray to the Lord in the court, because they have the final say. They are the Supreme Court is the final legal battle or legal battleground for politicians or party members or parties, opposing parties, like we have the PDP or the APC. Just like the last concluded power tussle between the PDP and the APC in Imo State, Nigeria. The case was decided by the courts. So this is the function of the judiciary. They interpret the law and they discuss cases. They make decisions on cases like this. They also strengthen the law in the sense that they make sure that none of the arms of government breaks the law. So it is their function to also, apart from interpreting the law, they strengthen the law and make sure that the rule of law is followed in the country. Thank you very much.
I hope the class was interesting. If you have questions, please drop them in the comment section or send us an email. We will love to help you further. See you in the next class.